play and call it work.
Hello there, Wargamers, and welcome to another MiniWarGaming First Impressions review. I got Vito and Luka here from MiniWarGaming to talk to you about the new Grey Knights and Ritual of the Damned. Now, we just finished the Thousand Sun coverage of that, so if you haven't checked that video out, should be going up the same day. By all means, go check that out. If you have any interest in the Thousand Suns, if you don't care about them, well, sit back, relax, and enjoy some Grey Knight coverage, I suppose. There will be some coverage of the Dark Angels, but that will be later in the week. Probably, if I had to guess, Wednesday as you're watching. If you're watching this on Saturday, it'll probably be coming out on Wednesday, and that'll be Matt and Steve. I was going to say Matt and Dave is Matt and Steve. Like, man, Matt and Dave, they care about Dark Angels. Matt and Steve will be doing the Dark Angels. Now, we have a game of the Vault that covers the new Grey Knights at 1,500 points, facing against the new Thousand Suns in the same book, played by Vito. I played the Grey Knights, tried them out, always kind of intrigued me, and I think they've gained a lot from this book, and they're quite interesting. So sit back and find out exactly what's changed. And if you're interested in that Vault game, the link will be down below. You can just get yourself a 7-day free trial. Check out all the new Psychic Awakening stuff coming out in this period with Book 4 to the review.
To the wall. So starting off with the Grey Knights, they have a really cool ability. Instead of doctrines, where all the other Space Marines get access to, they get Masters of the Warp.
It's a nice new flavorful way to play Grey Knights. But like the combat doctrines, great, super strong, super powerful. I'm glad they went with a different route with these guys, just because it gets old, right?
Yeah. Where doctrines, you always have to go from one doctrine to the next. With Masters of the Warp, or the Tides of the Warp, you get to choose which one of the tides you get to be in, and then you get to choose, well, depending on which kind of cycle that you have, you get to choose which ones you want to go through from back and forth.
And these are all, like, there's 4 options here. 3 of them are really good. One of them is probably never going to be chosen, but it's nice that they included it, I suppose. The first tide, again, like Vito said, you choose these at the beginning of the first battle round, before the first player goes. This is Tide of Fury. This is definitely one you don't choose at the beginning of the game. This allows infantry models to reroll wound rolls of 1 with their Nemesis weapons. Now, Nemesis weapons for Grey Knights are their Force weapons, like Nemesis Force Sword, Nemesis Force Halberd, Nemesis Demon Hammer, all that stuff, the Nemesis Falchions. So they get to reroll wound rolls of 1 with their melee weapons. You don't choose that turn 1. In fact, this is the worst one. In my opinion, I could be wrong. The other 3 have way more utility.
Will this be more of like a late game?
I still would prefer the escalation one with the smites.
Right.
Yes.
Because that one is really good.
Because that one's real good.
Next up, we have the Tide of Convergence.
This one is unique in the form that it adds +1 damage and strength to all your psi weapons. Now, you're curious what a psi weapon is. It's a psi cannon. We have the silencer, as well as the variants of those, like the Gatling silencer, the heavy psi cannon, twin psi cannon, all that kind of stuff. So +1 strength, +1 damage, amazing. But one thing important to note, it also works on any weapons that are currently under the effect of Psi-Bolt ammunition, which is the 2 command point stratagem that lets you load up Psi-Bolt ammunition into any type of bolter, be it Storm Bolter, Heavy Bolter, Twin Heavy Bolter, Normal Bolter, Combi Bolter, all that stuff. So in the case of Grey Knights, mostly Storm Bolters. So when you think of it this way, Psi-Bolt ammunition gives you +1 strength and +1 AP on your weapon. So let's say 10 Terminators have Storm Bolters. Now, they obviously have Bolter Discipline now. That's 40 shots, right? So you Psi-Bolt ammo them. That is 40 shots at Strength 5, AP 1. And then if you have this tied up, that is 40 shots at Strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage each.
Oof.
40 shots at Strength 6.
That's a lot.
AP 1.
AP 1.
2 damage.
2 damage. That's
2 damage each with this convergence up. Now, this convergence is also very good if you feel like spamming the heavy weapon team. I always
Purgator?
Purgation? One of the 2. The heavy weapon Grey Knight team. The
guys who go around and water the lawn.
Yes, those guys. Yeah. So they could take, there's squads of 5, they could take up to 4 heavy weapons. If you can bring 3 squads of 3, all with side cannons, and then those side cannons are all strength 8, AP 1, 2 damage each. That's 4 shots per model too. Like, this is a very powerful tide. I don't think it's the most powerful one, but it is the heaviest potential hitting one.
The next 2 are probably one of the better ones.
They're my preferred ones. In fact, I use these ones mostly in our game in the Vault against the Thousand Suns, and they were very effective.
Next up, we have the Tide of Shadows.
This was the one I chose. This is the one I would recommend using right away all the time, unless you just want to hammer someone with the Cybolt, the Tide of Convergence right away.
This one is really good. It really affected my gameplay heavily.
Oh, yes. So this is identical to the Raven Guard chapter tactic, minus the downside of it.
Yeah.
So the Raven Guard chapter tactic, you have to be more. If you're more than 12 away, you count as being in cover, and if you're already in cover and more than 12 away, then you're -1 to hit, and then you get the bonus of cover as well. Now with this one, you just no matter what, no matter where you are, you have cover, and if you're already in cover, no matter where you are, no matter how far away you are, you're -1 to hit. So you could have a squad of Rubric, well, in this case, like Rubric Marines firing at my Strike Squad or a Rhino more than an inch away. Well, this Rhino still has cover. It's not so much that they're obscured by cover, but they're using, they're masters of the warp. They're using the warp to shadow and hide themselves. Think of like Eldar trickery in this regard, right? So instead of seeing one Grey Knight, you see like 3 Grey Knights. You're not too sure which one's the real one. That's why you're kind of shooting at all of them. You're not too sure. That's what this one narratively does. This is probably my favorite one right away. I'd highly recommend that one. It doesn't have any restrictions on infantry or anything either. So it affects your whole army. Your Dread Knights have cover. All your vehicles have cover. Your Land Raiders, your Flyers have cover. Heck, everything. Literally everything. Yeah. Very powerful.
Last but certainly not least is going to be the Tides of Escalation. I think Luke and I both agree on this one. It is probably the most powerful when you get into it.
I suppose this one is subjective based on if you have a lot of Grey Knight. You might just have like giant squads of guys. Like say your army is just like a squad 10 Terminators and a couple squads of Strike Squad, and you don't really have a lot of characters. Then this one actually might not be that beneficial.
Yeah, based on army composition.
Exactly. Yeah. If you have a lot of MSU, like massive small units of Grey Knights, this one is then even better. So what this does is any unit with the Rites of Banishment ability, which is pretty much everything, which is the one that limits your smite to 12-inch range and it only does 1 mortal wound. Well, now it makes your smites do 2 mortal wounds. You got to remember, Grey Knights ignore the rule of increasing the casting value of smite by 1, like the Thousand Suns did. So smites are always 5 for Grey Knights, and with this Tide active, it is always 2 damage.
Yeah.
This is not one you want active right away. Again, I'd recommend Shadows. But man, was this real good in our game.
Yeah, especially come turn 2 and 3.
Yes, when everything shows up. Grey Knights, usually you have things in the Teleportarium ready to deep strike onto the table somewhere. And then at that point, you don't care about your 12-inch range smites because you're just 9 inches away from everything. And then your other Strike Squads or other things that were maybe in Razorbacks or Rhinos have disembarked at this point and then have left. Now, like we said earlier, you have to pick one Tide at the start of the game, and it can't change unless you use a Psychic Power, which is what we'll jump into next. The Grey Knights have an entire new discipline called the Dominus Discipline. Now, normally for Grey Knights, they go from the Sanctic Discipline. That is the rules in the book here. It just says they know this many powers from the Sanctic Discipline, blah, blah, blah. Now, the rules for the Dominus Discipline, it only affects Grey Knight characters. They can only take from this discipline, not the generic units. And the rule is, like, if they can take as many powers from the Dominus Discipline as they could from the Sanctic Discipline. And these are all utility-based. They're not really offensive, other than Inner Fire, which is one of them. Now, Warp Shaping is the first one we'll talk about. That is the one that covers what tides you can change up. Very basically off, it's a 5. And you have to choose a tide that isn't the current active one. Duh, right? Why would you want to use a power just to swap to the same one? They're covering the grounds, right? Then you just choose a different tide. That new tide is now the active tide. You don't have to wait for a cycle reset. You don't have to wait for it to be active next turn. It is immediately active. And then you can just kind of base it on whatever you want. Say you go first. Say you're going second, you choose Tide of Shadows just to mitigate your opponent's first turn and second turn shooting. Then all your guys show up on turn 2. You go to the Tide of Escalation. Now all your smites do 2 damage. All your guys are arranged for smiting. Or all your side cannons showed up. Or your Terminators showed up with their Cybolt ammo you're going to use. And then you go to the Tide of, I believe it is Convergence. Yeah, Tide of Convergence. That is where you're going to find most of your swaps happening. Now, this is nice over Doctrines, again, to note, because Doctrines, you have a fixed value where you have to go. These ones, you can ebb and flow between all of them whenever you want. Now, of course, with match play rules, you can only cast Warp Shaping once, so you can't go into the Tide of Escalation for the Psychic Phase to do 2 damage smites, and then at the end, a change to the Tide of Convergence. So you're stuck for one tide for one battle round.
What's nice about Warp Shaping, though, is only casting value of 5, so
Yes.
it's very easy to get off.
Yes. You have to make sure you at least have some of your characters with this, though. I don't know how many I'd recommend. I played with 1, and it worked out well enough. But you might want to be playing with 2 if your opponent has a way to target that character and kind of lock you in a tide. Now, if you're going to be locked in Tide of Shadows, that's not the worst, but you do want to branch out from there to get some hitting power, because Grey Knights don't have a whole lot of staying power, so they need the hitting power.
One of our next spells that we have is called Armored Resilience. Warp charge of value of 6. If manifested, select one friendly Grey Knight infantry unit within 12 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, when resolving an attack that targets that unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll.
Yes, this is a great addition to the Grey Knight army. Again, these are only for characters, these psychic powers. Though there's that 10-man squad of Terminators, which are more durable through stratagems now as well. As long as you have them, it gets pretty pricey. -1 wound, your Terminators. Bam!
That's really good.
That's super powerful. That's way better than a toughness up. That is everything. Like, oh, that is so good. But the Grey Knights need something like that because they don't have... let's face it, they're the old Space Marines. They don't have any staying power. Even the Primaris sometimes have a hard enough time sticking around. These old 1-wound T4 models, they're not... In the case of Terminators, 2 wounds, but that's not enough these days. So they need something like this Psyche power. Now the next power is Ethereal Manipulation. Not that great. You choose a unit, Grey Knight unit within 6 inches. They get to reroll all hit rolls if they're within half range of their enemy with their ranged weapon. It's pretty basic, pretty self-explanatory. Can be good, obviously. It obviously works well with more big Death Star units like the Terminators, but you could have something like Caldor Drago or a character nearby rerolling once might be enough. I don't think this is the best power, but it's nice to have.
Next spell that we have is the Edict Imperator. Luke and I were actually talking about this, and we're trying to find the utility of it. Essentially, what you can do is you shoot in your psychic phase, and then you move, and then you're allowed to move again. However, you're not allowed to shoot or charge in your subsequent phases.
Right. So right away, the utility here is the fact that you get to move again in the psychic phase. So it's like you move, and then you go to the psychic phase, and you shoot and move, but you can't shoot later on in the shooting phase. The only reason I can see the shooting being useful is to clear a screen so you can smite things behind that screen. Yeah. Like be a cultist or guardsman. Yeah. The storm bolters on most of your squads are enough to take all that stuff out.
It's either that or that double move to go ahead and maybe go grab objectives.
The double move is the biggest strength of this power. Yeah. I would agree 100%, especially on slower things like Terminators or Paladins and things like that. And to note, this does work on vehicles as well, so you can double move your vehicles if you need to get maybe something in a Land Raider deeper into enemy territory right away. Something to consider. Next one, Empyrean Domination. Pretty basic. They already showed this one off. Cast on 7, you get a command point. Done. That is literally it. You just farm a command point every turn with this Psyche power. I actually chose this one in the game because I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with the other ones. I wanted warp shaping, and then I had a lot of other stuff to keep my mind on, so I figured, you know what, get a command point, cast on a 7, sure, I could do that. I could work with that easy enough. It was actually super useful. It helped me in a big factor. And of course, when you're out of command points, the fact to know that you can always, not always, but probably get one more back is, it's nice to rely on. Now, it's cast on a 7, but you're a Grey Knight, so you get +1, no matter what. So it's technically a 6.
And the last one that we have is called Inner Fire. Warp charge value of 5, so it's fairly easy to get off.
Yeah, 4 for a Grey Knight.
Select one enemy unit within 1 inch of the Psyker and roll a number of d6 equal to the result of the psychic test. For each roll of a 1, that Psyker suffers 1 mortal wound. And for each roll of a 3-up, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
Nuts.
That's 3, yeah.
That's nuts. That is nuts. You can kill your own Psyker. Granted, you can kill your own Psyker, but that is so cool. Now, granted, there's a moment. Oh, was there? Yeah, I think there's a moment in our game where I could have used it, but I didn't want to risk killing a character. But I wanted to show off the new psychic powers so bad.
Yeah, that's really good.
Let's just say this character had too few wounds to really use this that well. But you're a Grey Knight. You get +1 to your cast already. So let's say the average is 7. You roll on 2d6. So you can get the power off, and then you'll actually be an 8. Assuming your opponent doesn't deny it. That's 8 rolls for mortal wounds on a 3-up.
That's powerful.
But then at that point, on average, you're going to take 1 to 2 mortal wounds back. So, you know.
There's risk. There is risk, but I mean, high risk, high reward.
You just explode with fiery psychic energy.
Yeah.
And sorry, I should probably tell you what it can target. It can only target things you're in combat with. So an enemy unit within 1 inch. It's not like you're 24 inches away and be like, bam, inner fire.
Just a wall of fire.
Just take like 10 mortal wounds or something. No, you have to be in close combat with them. So there is that restriction as well. But that is so cool. Moving on to the Relics of Titan. New relics available to the Grey Knights in addition to the ones in the book here. There's 6. but we're only gonna talk about 3 of them because those are my 3 favorite ones. And if you want to check out the rest, just get your hands on the new Psychic Awakening book and check them out for yourselves. But I just don't think they're as cool as these ones here. First one, Blade of the Forsworn. This is a Nemesis sword upgrade, or a Nemesis Greatsword, which is on the Dread Knight, though I don't see why you'd want to put this on the Dread. Maybe fixed 3 damage isn't so bad. Anyways, it's strength +1, -3, 3 damage, whereas a Nemesis Force Sword is strength user -3, D3 damage. The biggest upgrade here is the fact that demons cannot take invulnerable saving throws against this.
That's big.
So that's notable demons, big notable demons with big notable invulnerable saves, Mortarion and Magnus.
Oh, yeah, wow.
So no invulnerable saves on them. Now, it doesn't hurt Mortarion as much because he's got their disgusting resilience, but that just is like right up to Magnus, no saves allowed. Well, I guess he'd have a 6-up because it's only AP 3, but still. Just demons in general, which can be obnoxious. Not the best one, but something to consider because it's cool.
That even scares me against my Keeper's Secrets.
That's true, yeah, Keeper's Secrets, yeah.
Or Shalaxi as well. She's a Keeper's Secret as well. But yeah, because you can spend, I think it's 1 or 2 command points for Warp Surge to give her a 4-up invul. Yeah. It's like, oh, nope.
Never mind. I'm just going to cut through you. No saves.
Yeah, that's really good.
Heard you like having no saves against me. Now, Grey Knights are already kitted to fight against demons, so this is even more so against them. One note, I know, backtracking a little bit, the Tide of Escalation, the 2 damage smites, completely useless against fighting demons because you already do 3 mortal wounds to demons. So in that case, you'd want to go with the other tides. Anyways, next relic.
Next one is going to be the Sanctic Shard. When a psychic test is taken for a model with this relic, you can re-roll the result. That's already big.
Super great already.
But the caveat is that you can add 1 to the total of the psychic test taken for a model with this relic. That's big too.
So considering you're a Grey Knight, you already have +1 to attempt to manifesting psychic powers and denying the witch.
So now you got another +1, so you get +2.
Yeah, +2.
Huge.
And you re-roll your psychic test. So you put that on. You put that on like a support character who's going to try and change up the tide, almost a guaranteed tide change. It makes it harder for your opponent to deny the witch on that as well. And then if you want to get those support, like -1 to wound off, because that one is super important. Then there you go. You have this relic to support that. I think this is my favorite of the new relics. Is it the most powerful? I don't know. Maybe, probably, but it's my favorite.
When we played the game in the vault, it felt a little weird for the Thousand Suns to be up against the ropes a couple times.
Right, when it came to the Psychic Might.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time in this edition, it's just been Thousand Suns hard countering Grey Knights. Just longer range spells, actually double range on the Smite, and overwhelming us with like easy denies. And now there's a lot of psychic strength coming back to the Grey Knights, and this is the balance of power is there now, and you'll see it in the game. Stave of Supremacy is the last one we're going to be talking about here. This is a Nemesis staff upgrade. So the only model I think that we have in our collection is a Paladin with one, but so in that regard, we technically can't take it, so it has to be like on a Librarian or someone else who can't take it. Regardless, if you have this upgrade, any enemy that attempts to cast or manifest a psychic power within 18 inches automatically suffers a perils on any double roll. It's a 1 in, it goes from, I can't remember what the odds are, double 1 or double 6, but it goes from that to a 1 in 6 chance of periling every time you cast it, especially if you're playing against the Thousand Suns.
They're going to be casting quite a bit.
If you're casting 6 spells a turn, you're probably gonna, like, almost guaranteed you can get 1 perils a turn, right? Yeah. So that one is not the most powerful. It's very situational. Obviously, if you're playing against an opponent's army who has maybe 1 psychic for like 1 support psychic power, then that's definitely not what you bring. But it has some potential. Grey Knights also have access to 6 new litanies, which means their chaplain had to get an upgraded data sheet, which is in the book here. So pretty much all that did for him was say that he has to roll his litany of hate to make it go off. This one we re-roll all failed hit or all hit rolls in this case because it's a nicely updated data sheet. And you have access to 6 new litanies. We'll talk about 3 of them though, of course, because only a couple of them are really that interesting. The biggest one for me is the Atonement of Focus? No, of Guidance, for Guidance.
This one's a really good one.
You choose a Grey Knight unit within 6 inches of this model, and then they just ignore all modifiers to ballistic skill. And that's it. Actually, it's not weapon skill, it's just ballistic skill. They ignore all to hit modifiers for shooting attacks. So playing as Plague Bearers, -2 to hit, with Miasma, they don't care about that. Just gun them down anyways. We hit on 3s. You can't stop us, you demon filth. Not a bad one at all.
Next up, we have the Litany of Faith. This one's pretty easy. Whenever you take a mortal wound on a 5-up, you ignore it.
It's true. Yeah, this one...
5-up, feel no pain against mortal wounds.
Specifically mortal wounds, yes.
Yeah.
So again, a lot of these you see are focusing on demons. A couple of them increase AP of weapons as well, which is against other forces. But This one affects all Grey Knights within 6 as well. You don't just choose one unit. It says a 6-inch aura of ignoring more wounds on a 5-up. The last one we'll talk about is the Refrain of Convergence. This one only works for your chaplain, but it gives them a further +3 to deny the witch tests. This one can be specifically good against... funny enough, you'd think like an army like the Thousand Suns or any other Psychic Heavy army where there's that one psychic power you absolutely don't want them to get off. If you get this litany off, this prayer off, then you have +4 to deny the witch because as a Grey Knight you already have +1. So with this in paired with that +4, that's gonna almost not guaranteed turn off a power, but it'll probably turn off that power. Lastly, let's talk about the stratagems the Grey Knights get. 2 pages of stratagems, 3, 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's randomly 16 extra stratagems.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. The Thousand Suns got 7, but I think they had more in their book to begin with as opposed to the Grey Knights.
That's true.
So kind of evening out. They're bringing the Grey Knights back or more into line with the rest of the stuff. Now we're only going to cover some of them.
So the first one that we're going to be talking about is Overwhelming Assault. It's for 1 command point. You can use the stratagem and the fight phase and select 1 Nemesis Dread Knight unit from your army. Until the end of that phase, add 1 to the attack characteristics of that unit, and when resolving an attack made by a model in that unit, you can reroll a wound roll of 1, and you can reroll damage rolls of 1.
Right. So you don't have to charge, nothing like that. You just get to reroll wound rolls of 1, damage rolls of 1, and you get an extra attack. For 1 command point, not so bad, kind of making your Dread Knight a little bit more reliable because they don't have fixed damage. They do D6 damage and poo. Next one is Dynamic Insertion. This is the one that they showed off on Warhammer Community. It allows you to put one of your units that were currently off the table, and when they go onto the table, they can show up anywhere more than 3 inches away from enemies, but they're not allowed to charge, which is fine because you just put that on a squad of Stormbolters, or you know what? That's actually not a bad spot to put your Terminators, your 10 Terminators, all your Stormbolters, and your Sidebolt ammo. You put them right in the middle of the table, right in a spot where your opponent can't really control, and then later on in the next turn, they get right into your opponent's lines, and they're really hard to kill there too.
There's also other tactics you can do with this. You can have them with Flamers.
The Purgation Squad.
Which is really good as well. Or you can use this for going after objectives.
Right.
Boom, you're right on top of it. Or you could even go character sniping. So you have, let's say, for example, your opponent has used screens, and then you have a character right behind, right? Yeah. Boom, they come in right behind. Boom, you automatically sniped a character.
Exactly. This
has utility.
Yes, this is probably one of their better stratagems. There's a lot of access. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that one. Very glad they included that here. Very Grey Knight flavored. That precision strike.
Another pretty decent one that we have here is Empiric Surge for 1 command point. We can use the stratagem in the Psychic phase after a Grey Knight Psyker. Let's do that one again.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. We can. Colin, I'm just going to redo that one again. Another really good one that we have here is Empiric Surge for 1 command point. We can use the stratagem in your Psychic phase after a Grey Knight Psyker unit from your army has manifested a psychic power. Until the end of that phase, when a Psychic test is taken for a friendly Grey Knight Psyker unit within 6 inches of that unit, you get to add 1 to the total. Situational,
yeah.
But when you're adding 1, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
It helps with the overall psychic. Because this is a very psychic army. So
right.
Whenever you can add 1, add 2, especially because this army does a lot of that, I think it's a force multiplier.
Exactly. That's what this one does, right? If you're gonna do like a psychic Death Star of like a bunch of psychers all in like grouped up little area, this is great because then they're all a further +1, which makes them all +2 base. Adding the relic for +3 on one of them, right? You can see how this all kind of keeps stacking up.
Absolutely.
Next one we're talking about is Bring Down the Beast. Now, it does cost 2 command points, a little more pricey. But in your shooting phase, you pick an enemy vehicle or monster, and your entire army of Grey Knights get to reroll wound rolls against it. And that's pretty much it. You pick a target, you reroll all wound rolls against it.
That's really good.
But it is 2 command points.
You kind of pay the price for it.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
I mean, you get to reroll everything. So
everything. And if it's like, again, we're talking about something like a big Primarch or like a big Baneblade tank or something like that.
Yeah.
That's where you get a lot of advantage out of that.
Or even
a knight.
Knights or repulsors.
Yep, that's true.
Seeing a lot of more repulsors now,
right.
Especially with Space Marines or even in like current tournaments and stuff like that. You just get a ton of those.
Just reroll rolls against it. Yeah, trying to really focus fire down that one main target.
Yeah. Okay, so another really strong one is Preternatural Senses. Preternatural Senses for 1 command point.
Oh yes.
For 1, I don't know about 1, maybe 2, but for 1, it's really good. So your Purgation Squad, which is kind of like your heavies.
Which is your heavies, yeah.
Yeah. Whenever they fire Overwatch, they get to make hits instead of 6s, 4s, 5s, and 6s.
They hit you on a 4-up in Overwatch, folks, for 1 command point.
Who do these guys think they are? Iron Hands?
Right. Well, to be fair, the Iron Hand strategy that let them Overwatch on a 4 or more got bumped up to 2 command points.
Did it release? And this one's only on 1.
This one's only on 1. So
I wonder if there's going to be an FAQ, maybe.
The Iron Hands could have bigger squads to get more out of
Okay,
this.
fair.
This one only works for the purgation squads, but it's still a heavy weapon squad. But it's a good defense for them.
True.
Now, the last specific Grey Knight one we want to talk about is redoubtable defenses. This one works with their Terminators. It costs 1 command point if it's on a squad of 5 or less, 2 command points if it's between 6 and 10. Now, what this does is it reduces, when they're shot at is when you choose to use it, and you reduce the damage of the shooting attack by 1 to a minimum of 1. So all of a sudden, things like supercharged plasma do not kill your Terminators anymore. In fact, they're much weaker at killing your Terminators. And then other big heavy weapons. You mostly want to use this on anything that does 2 damage against Terminators, or D3 damage against Terminators, or anything that does D3 or flat 3 damage against your Paladins. It does work on Paladins because Paladins are Grey Knight Terminators. A great stratagem, I must say, especially combined with the fact that you could have armored resilience on your Terminators as well. So make them -1 to wound, and then they take 1 less damage as well.
Increases the survivability.
Yeah, and like all of a sudden your Terminators are starting to look more like what Terminators should on the actual tabletop. Some honorable mentions are some of the stratagems that they have access to from the generic Space Marine Codex. So much like the Codex here, that has some from the original Space Marine Codex, they were given a handful more of them, such as Transhuman Physiology, Fury of the First, or Fury of the Proven in this case, which is Terminators get +1 to hit, as well as Duty Eternal, which is half damage on your Dreadnoughts. Now that doesn't work for Dread Knights because they're a vehicle that's not a Dreadnought, but Dreadnought, I've seen a lot of people play Grey Knights with Dreadnoughts. You have Venerable Dreadnoughts if they, pretty sure they can still do that.
I mean, the old school, the Rifleman Dreads?
Just like, like the boxes.
Yeah.
So just half damage on them is always useful. Makes them a lot more durable as well. And that, folks, is it for this First Impressions coverage of the new Grey Knights out of Ritual of the Damned, the 4th book in Psychic Awakening. Again, Vito and I actually played a game with them against the new Thousand Suns. So if you want to see both of those armies in practice, then go check that out at the MiniWarGaming Vault. You can just get a 7-day free trial if you are only interested in that, and you can just cancel it afterwards. It's just, we find that most people stick around. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you haven't checked out the Thousand Sun one that both Vito and myself did, go check that one out. And stay tuned for the Dark Angel one to come out in the near future. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And as always, happy wargaming. Make sure to check out Vito and Luka playing in the new Thousand Suns versus the Grey Knights in the MiniWarGaming Vault. Click the link below for your 7-day free trial.